In the early 19th century, the British Empire was a vast and rising power. Steam engines roared, factories filled the cities with smoke, and London stood at the center of the modern world. But inside Kensington Palace, far from the noise of the streets, a young girl lived under the watchful eye of her strict mother. Her name was Alexandrina Victoria, the future Queen of Great Britain. Victoria's childhood was lonely and controlled. Her father had died when she was an infant, and her mother, the Duchess of Kent, kept her isolated from the rest of the royal family. Every hour of her day was planned, every friend carefully chosen. She was taught to behave like a monarch before she even knew she would become one. When King William IV died in 1837, the 18-year-old princess woke to find herself the most powerful woman in the world. Victoria's coronation marked the dawn of a new era. Britain looked to her as a symbol of hope and renewal. Yet behind the crown was a young woman, intelligent, curious, and spirited, who longed for affection and trust in a world that demanded perfection. Across the sea, in the small German duchy of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, lived Prince Albert, Victoria's cousin. He was scholarly, serious, and deeply moral, a man who believed in science, progress, and duty. Their shared uncle, King Leopold I of Belgium, dreamed of uniting the two. In 1836, Victoria met Albert for the first time. She was 17, he was 18. Their meeting was formal and brief, yet she recorded in her diary that Albert had beautiful blue eyes, a sweet expression, and the most delightful manners. 3 years later, when Albert visited England again, the spark between them had grown into something deeper. Victoria, now queen in her own right, could not be courted like any other woman. Tradition demanded that she must propose. On October 15, 1839, she called Albert to her private chamber and, with both courage and shyness, asked him to marry her. "It would make me very happy if you would consent," she said softly. He accepted, and history took a new turn. Their wedding on February 10, 1840, was a moment of national joy. Crowds lined the streets of London, church bells rang, and the young queen rode in her carriage dressed in white satin and lace, a color choice that would define bridal fashion for generations. Albert looked every inch the prince, handsome, dignified, and calm. For Britain, it was more than a royal wedding, it was a symbol of renewal, a promise that the throne would be founded on love as well as power. But marriage for a monarch was never simple. In the early days, Victoria struggled to balance affection with authority. She had ruled alone and found it hard to share her decisions. Albert, meanwhile, found himself without a clear role. Many in the court dismissed him as a foreign outsider. Yet his patience and intellect slowly changed everything. He became Victoria's closest advisor, reading government papers, helping her draft letters, and guiding her through the turbulent politics of empire. The two worked side by side. Albert believed that the monarchy should be moral and useful, not merely ceremonial. He supported science, art, and social reform. Victoria, once impulsive and emotional, began to rely on his calm strength. "Albert is my protector, my guide, my stay, my all," she wrote. "Without him, I cannot stand." Their partnership transformed the image of the British crown. They lived as a family first and monarchs second. At Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, Albert designed a peaceful retreat where they could raise their children in warmth and simplicity. There, the Queen and her prince read together, painted, walked in the gardens, and laughed with their 9 children. To the public, they became the perfect royal couple, a picture of domestic virtue in an age of change. Albert's vision extended far beyond the palace. He championed modern education and the advancement of science. His greatest triumph came with the Great Exhibition of 1851, held in London's Hyde Park. Under his leadership, the enormous Crystal Palace was built, a cathedral of glass and iron displaying the inventions and artistry of the industrial age. When the exhibition opened, millions came from around the world to see it. It was a peaceful celebration of human progress, and Victoria proudly recorded in her journal, "It was a day of triumph for my beloved Albert." Yet the life they built together was not without challenge. The pressures of empire, family, and endless public duty weighed on them both. Victoria's emotions ran deep. She could be fiery, jealous, and demanding. Albert's calm sometimes frustrated her. They quarreled, but their bond endured. Letters between them reveal devotion and tenderness that never faded. "Dearest, greatly beloved Victoria," Albert once wrote, "I need not say how much my heart is entirely yours." As the years passed, their influence reached every corner of Britain. Albert reformed the royal household, encouraged artists and inventors, and set new moral standards for public life. Victoria became the nation's steadfast figure, a queen who embodied dignity and strength. Together they helped shape the Victorian age, an era defined by progress, family, and empire. But in the midst of glory, shadows began to gather. By the late 1850s, Albert's health was failing. The endless workload and London's harsh winters drained him. He suffered from stomach pain and fatigue, yet he continued to labor for the crown and his family. In 1861, a scandal involving their eldest son, the Prince of Wales, brought Albert great distress. Against the advice of his doctors, he traveled to Cambridge to confront his son. The journey left him gravely ill. Within weeks, fever struck. Doctors diagnosed typhoid, though even they were uncertain. As Albert grew weaker, Victoria refused to believe he could die. She kept watch at his bedside in Windsor Castle, holding his hand, praying for recovery. But on December 14, 1861, at the age of 42, Prince Albert, the prince consort, passed away. The news plunged the empire into mourning, but no one grieved more deeply than the Queen. For Victoria, life seemed to stop. She shut herself away in black mourning clothes and withdrew from public life for years. "My life as a happy one has ended," she wrote in despair. "The world is gone for me." Her people called her the Widow of Windsor. Statues of Albert rose across the land, and his memory became a sacred presence in every royal residence. In the decades that followed, Victoria ruled alone, but never without his shadow beside her. Every letter, every ceremony, every decision bore the echo of his guidance. She surrounded herself with his portraits, kept his clothes untouched, and spoke of him as though he still advised her from beyond. Under her reign, the empire expanded to its greatest reach, and her image became the very embodiment of British power. Yet those who knew her best understood that behind the crown still beat the heart of a woman who loved only once. "He was my all in all," she wrote, "and I shall never cease to miss him till we meet again." When Queen Victoria died in January 1901, she was laid beside Albert in the royal mausoleum at Frogmore, just as she had wished. After 40 years of widowhood, the queen who had once ruled an empire joined her beloved prince once more in eternal rest. Their story, of duty, partnership, and enduring devotion, remains one of the greatest love stories in history. It was not built on fairy tale perfection, but on respect, sacrifice, and shared purpose. Together they redefined what it meant to be royal, and their legacy shaped a century. Even now, more than 100 years later, the names Victoria and Albert stand as a symbol of love that conquered time itself, a reminder that behind every throne, behind every empire, there can still beat the simple, human heart of love.